Bonjour. In today's lesson, we're going to talk about giving commands. This is a form called imperatif. So when we talk about imperatif, or in English, the imperative, we're talking about giving commands. We're talking about giving commands with the game unit, because in order to write your French instructions, you have to be able to tell people what to do. So you're going to be using commands. So first off, we're going to start with going over the possible nouns that you might be using in your instructions and for your game. So a card is une carte. Les instructions. Les instructions. The board, like the board that you play on, is called la planche. Okay. If you're using cards and you have a pile of cards that you draw from, you would call that le tas. Le tas. If you have a pile of cards that you discard into, then you would call that l'écart. L'écart. That is the discard pile. Dice, if you have just one, if you're using just one die for your game, that's called un dé, or les dés is plural. Game is le jeu. Victory, once you've won, la victoire. A team is l'équipe. It's a feminine word. The turn, like whose turn it is le tour. If you make a move on a board, that's called un pas. A step, a move, un pas. What you play with, your game token, is called un jeton. To move, if you say like move certain number of spaces, you call those les places. Okay. If you're using a spinner instead of dice, that's called une girouette. The goal of the game, call that le but. A player, un joueur. In order to say the first player, le premier joueur, and the next player, le prochain joueur. This lesson, however, we're mostly going to be focusing on the verbs. So let's go over the verbs. To move forward, you're going to say avancer. To move backward, bouger à l'envers. To draw a card, tirer une carte. To place something somewhere would be mettre. To roll the dice, rouler les dés. Or remember, if you have just one die, rouler le dé. To skip or to jump, so like to skip squares, you would say sauter. To look for, if you have to look for something in your game, that would be chercher. To play is jouer. To spin, again, if you have a spinner, then you would say faire tournoyer. Gagner is to win. Perdre is to lose. Tricher is to cheat, although I hope you're not doing that in your games. To make, faire. To write, écrire. To collect, collectionner. To shout out, crier. To stop, arrêter. To trade, échanger, and to discard, écarter. Now, if you look carefully at these verbs, most of them end in ER. That means that you already know how to conjugate all of these verbs, like avancer, bouger, tirer, rouler, sauter, chercher, jouer, gagner, tricher, collectionner, crier, arrêter, échanger, and écarter. Now, faire, you already know, okay? And for the, let's see here, 1, 2, 3, 4 verbs that you don't know, okay? I've given you a little way to remember what the command form is. I've given you those already. They look pretty similar to what you're going to see on the next few pages as we learn how to give commands. So giving commands, we're focusing mostly on verbs that you already know, but you're also going to have to give commands with verbs that you're not as familiar with. So I've given you those here. So just a quick review of ER verbs, as most of these are. We have the verb rouler, rouler meaning to roll dice, for example. So we have je roule, tu roules, il, elle roule, nous roulons, vous roulez, and il, elle roule. Notice the endings e, es, e, ons, ez, ent. Now, in order to give a command, you're telling people what to do. So the command forms, there's actually only 3 of them. So we're not going to pay attention to the je form, the il or elle singular form, or the il or elle plural form. Okay, we're only going to look at these 3. So let's look at them on the next page. Giving a command is very easy in French, and it's very easy in English, and it looks very much the same way. So if we go from you roll, which we have here, tu roules is the same thing in English as you roll. Okay? And we're going to change it to roll. You're telling someone, roll the die. Roll it. Okay? Roule le dé. Now, we've done 2 things. One thing that we've done is we have gotten rid of our subject. So, tu, we've dropped it. Okay? And also in the tu form, you have to do something special with ER verbs. You also drop the S. You don't hear it in the way that it sounds, but the way it's written, you will see a change. So we've gotten rid of our subject and the S for tu, and we're left with roule, roule le dé, roll the die. Okay, so we've gone from you roll to roll, telling someone to do something. And the second one, we've done the same thing. Okay, we've gone from vous roulez, you all roll. Okay, so speaking to a group, you all roll, to roll. We've done one thing actually. We've just dropped our subject and we're left with our verb, rouler le dé. The last command, it's difficult to kind of think of it as a command, but the form is similar. Okay, so we go from we roll to let's roll. Okay, so it's kind of like a command, but you're talking with a whole group that includes yourself, so let's roll. So once again, we've done just one thing here. We've dropped our subject and we're left with roulons. Roulons le dé. Let's roll. Let's roll the die. Okay, next we're going to talk about giving commands in the negative. This is just as easy as giving an affirmative command, telling someone to do something rather than not telling someone to do something. It's just as simple. So once again, we're going to use the verb tricher, which means to cheat. Okay? So although I've conjugated this out completely, it's a regular ER verb, we're not going to be using the je form, the il or elle singular, or the il or elle plural. We're only going to concern ourselves with these 3 forms here. Remember, to make a sentence negative, the ne and the pas, the 2 pieces of your negation, go around your verb. So we have tu ne triches pas. You don't cheat. Now, instead of saying you don't cheat, we want to tell people don't cheat. Okay? So, just like we did with the affirmative commands, we're going to get rid of tu, and for the tu form, we're also going to drop the S on the verb. Okay? And we're left with ne triche pas. Don't cheat. Same thing in the vous form. We're going to drop our subject, and we're left with ne trichez pas. Don't cheat. You're telling a whole group. And the same thing with nous. We're going from nous ne trichons pas, we don't cheat, to Ne trichons pas. Let's not cheat. So remove the nous, and we're left with our command in the negative. Ne trichons pas. Let's not cheat. Okay? So once again, you are capable of making commands now with all of the verbs on this list. Okay? Remember, faire, you already know the verb faire. So even though it's not an ER verb, you can still take the tu, the vous, and the nous forms to make it into a command. So if you're telling one person to do something, fait, use the tu conjugation. If you're telling multiple people to do something, faites, use the vous conjugation. For the four verbs that you're less familiar with or not familiar with at all, I've given you the vous command, because the vous command is what you're going to be using most in your game, because in your instructions, you're speaking to a whole array of people. You're speaking to everyone playing. So you're going to be using the vous form the most. So for mettre, to place, it is mettez. To lose, perdez. To pick or to choose, choisissez. That one's kind of long. Okay? And if you're telling someone to write or a group of people to write, écrivez. So those are the commands for those four verbs. Okay, that is all I have for you. I'm going to wish you bonne chance, and I will see you next time.